The incoming administration is, I think, facing a situation in Iran that is vastly different than what it was 4 years ago. In our policy paper, we talk about the full range of what's going on both inside Iran, inside the region, as well as the criteria for a viable alternative that can lead towards progress and democracy within Iran. So to answer the question of why now, I would say the regime in Tehran is weaker than ever, and the incoming Trump administration has an opportunity to support regime change, engage with Iran's viable democratic alternative, and facilitate a transition to a secular democratic republic. For decades, Tehran has really relied on a dual strategy of repression at home, as well as terrorism and warfare abroad to maintain its grip on power. But several developments in recent years have exposed the regime for the paper tiger that we all know it has been. Specifically, within Iran, the 85-year-old Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is facing a dire succession crisis that is fueling a governmental crisis that is aggravated by a growing economic turmoil across the country. At the same time, we've had several nationwide uprisings that have shown that the Iranian people have rejected the entirety of the theocratic regime and are more importantly, no longer deterred by the threats that are faced by the security forces. So as we can see within Iran, Tehran is quickly running out of options to deal with growing internal discontent and rejection of its regime. At the same time, regionally, Tehran has suffered a series of debilitating losses with the near destruction of its proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, as well as the recent collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria. The IRGC has spent years and many resources, both military resources, monetary resources, and actual lives lost in building up this network of proxies across the region, which has pretty much entirely vanished overnight, leaving Tehran exposed and vulnerable. So against this backdrop, OIAC's 2025 policy paper offers a strategic framework that the United States can use to move beyond appeasement to a policy that capitalizes on the regime's vulnerabilities and embraces the Iranian people as a vessel for democratic change within the country. In particular, we highlight the need to combine maximum economic pressure on the regime with a proactive support for the organized resistance in the country. So what does that look like? Economic pressure is through heavy sanctions that target individuals both within Khamenei's inner circle, as well as key sectors like oil, natural gas, and nuclear energy. This is a regime that survives on brute force, and the more that the United States can shut off Tehran's financial streams, the less resources they have to wage war both on the Iranian people as well as on their regional neighbors. At the same time, the United States must also recognize the Iranian people's fundamental right to overthrow their regime and to establish their own democratic government. Dozens of world leaders and officials, including, by the way, members of President Trump's previous administration, such as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and incoming Special Envoy Keith Kellogg, have already recognized the National Council of Resistance of Iran as the most capable alternative for this regime. So as economic pressure constrains Khamenei's resources, engagement with groups like the National Council of Resistance can help fuel momentum for a grassroots movement to help eventually bring down this regime. And let me finish on this one last note. We must be clear that the Iranian people are not asking for foreign intervention of any kind. Regime change will ultimately come from within with the Iranian people themselves. But the United States has a crucial opportunity to help facilitate this democratic transition by working with our allies, engaging with grassroots movements, and recognizing the legitimacy of the Iranian people's struggle against the mullahs.
And Seena, you mentioned Marco Rubio's confirmation hearing that went on this morning, and he said, quote, Iran and that regime is at its weakest point in recent memory, maybe ever. And he pointed out, as you did, the proxies in the region, whether it's setbacks in Lebanon, Syria, Hamas, the blackouts. And so certainly watching as Marco Rubio's confirmation hearing continues, and he looks very much set to be the next Secretary of State.